All right, guys, so we got a devastating story to talk about here. Apparently, U.S. homelessness just hit a record high in 2024. Record high. I mean, look, this is just one data point, but it really sort of starkly puts into perspective the absurd notion that some people were trying to argue, which is like, hey, the economy's already great. Everything's already great. Everything's already awesome. So forget like change politically. Let's just celebrate line on graph go up. GDP high, right? It's not the way to go. It's not the way to go. And I do think ultimately that one of the main reasons why Kamala lost is because Trump was viewed as the change candidate among the American public. And there was this semblance of like, she's just a continuation of the status quo. And what's the status quo? Well, this it is. It's this right here. And it's not good, right? Because I guarantee you homelessness is going to get worse under Trump. I guarantee you that. But it just goes to show you really have to connect with people's pain in order to gain power and hold power, right? So let's look at some of the specifics here. This is devastating. The U.S. homeless population increased by more than 18% in a year, driven by high housing costs. Oh, wow. Look at the honesty here. Usually you get the deflections and the obfuscations like from conservatives where they say, oh, it's all about mental illness. It's all about paranoid schizophrenia. It's all about drug addiction. It's all about your individual moral failings. That's what they try to do. They try to gaslight you into thinking it's only individual moral failings, and that's why people end up homeless. That is not true. There are massive economic and systemic factors that lead to this. The number one is high housing costs. So driven up 18% a year, driven by high housing costs, natural disasters, and a spike in migration to large cities, government officials said. The Department of Housing and Urban Development said Friday that more than 770,000 people were in shelters. 770,000. The old number that I always came across was like 600,000. Temporary housing or had no shelter, according to a survey carried out one night in January 2024. That number follows a 12% increase the previous year and is the highest since the federal government began an annual count of the homeless population in 2007. So highest ever. Highest ever. Last year, there was a 12% increase. This year, there's an 18% increase. Record number of homeless. The figure is likely an undercount as it does not include people temporarily staying with family and friends. That's an important point right there because this number is clearly an undercount because there are plenty of people who are homeless, but they're still able to sort of mask it a little bit because they have a friend or they have a family member who will take them in and you can sleep on the couch or you can sleep in the basement, right? That's a thing. That's a thing. And those people are, there's like levels to homelessness. There's levels to it. And that's probably the first level, right? You know, we got evicted, we can't pay the bills, but we have loved ones who will allow us in and let us stay there for a certain period of time, right? There's that. And then, like I said, there's a whole ladder. There's different levels to this shit. One of those levels is living in your car, right? If you don't have a family member or friend who will let you stay in the basement or on the couch or whatever, you live in your car. And then, of course, there's a lot of the very obvious homelessness. That's usually like the final step where it's like there's just nowhere for these people to go. Nowhere. All right, let's continue here. Authorities caution that the data is nearly a year old and that both rents and the situation at the U.S. border have changed since the survey was carried out. Family homelessness overall rose 39% from the year before. Family homelessness. And more than doubled in 13 places that said they had been affected by migration. That was in contrast to the more than 370 other local areas that did not report being affected by migration, where family homelessness rose less than 8% on average. Children under 18 experienced the biggest increase with nearly 150,000 homeless on the night of the survey. There was a 6% increase in the homeless population age 65 or older. So that's disturbing. Children 18 and under, the biggest increase. So there's kids who are homeless. There are people, senior citizens age 65 and over, who are homeless. If that doesn't disturb you, then nothing disturbs you. That's as dark as it gets. And understand something, guys. Like, we need to remember just how directly public economic policy impacts people. So during COVID, during the pandemic, we actually expanded the social safety net. So while that was going on, we had an eviction ban, extended unemployment, extra unemployment, a foreclosure ban, a child tax credit expansion. We had free school meals, extra food stamp benefits, that's the SNAP program, and a Medicaid expansion. So with that social safety net expansion, this is why you saw, for example, child poverty dropped nearly 50% like this, just like that. Why? Because we actually had an expanded social safety net because we had a pandemic ravaging the country. Well, guess what? All of those programs, there was a sunset provision on them. They all went away. They weren't renewed. And then boom, child poverty shoots back up 50%. Right? And now you get this massive spike in homelessness. So, like, these things matter, guys. These things, like, these policies really matter. They really have an impact. And oftentimes people tend to intellectualize it and detach it from a real world scenario. And you can't do that because this is the end result of bad public policy. This is the end result of austerity. They continue here. There were also some positive trends noted in the report. Homelessness among military veterans fell 8%, continuing a years-long decline, and some cities were able to get homeless residents off the street. Los Angeles, which has some of the highest housing costs in the country, saw its homeless population shrink by 5%, the first decline in 7 years. The number of homeless people in Dallas fell 16% over 2 years, and Chester County near Philadelphia in Pennsylvania registered a 60% decrease over 5 years due to legal and education programs, increasing the affordable housing and homelessness prevention efforts aimed at migrant workers, officials said. So in other words, this is another example of if you want to do something about this, you can do something about this. You can do something about this. You just need programs in place to get this taken care of, right? There was that study, remember the Stockton, California UBI study where a certain number of people got a check every month. It was like $500 or thereabouts. And come to find out, people use that money for all of the responsible, necessary things. Pay for food, pay for the bills. Some people are able to use that and leave a job that they hated and go find a new job that they liked, right? It's like just things like that make a tremendous difference. Having a roof over people's heads, right? That makes a tremendous difference. Now, unfortunately, in California, a lot of the money that is supposed to go towards homelessness doesn't. And in New York, too, there's this whole, it's like a whole scam industry of homelessness shelters where you got these assholes making profit off of it. But the answer then isn't, let's not fix homelessness then. The answer is, let's crack down on the criminals who are exploiting these people and robbing the taxpayers, and then also fix homelessness in a correct and moral way, right? And by the way, just having a roof over everybody's head, having the right to a roof over your head, that saves money in the long run. This is what people don't understand. Actually, putting a roof over the heads of homeless people saves money for the taxpayers in the long run. Because when you don't put a roof over somebody's head, then guess what? They end up more in contact with police officers, spending time in prison, needing more extensive medical care when they do need medical care. So if you tackle it up front, then it just costs less. Right? Not that cost should be at the forefront of the conversation when discussing this. I mean, this is a national disgrace. And the final point is, bro, like, our media is so bad that you're really not going to hear talk about this. Like, this is a huge deal. This is a huge deal. Homelessness skyrocketing 18%, 770,000 people homelessness. You have kids under 18 homeless, people over the age of 65 homeless. Like, this is a huge deal, and it is a moral failing of our nation, and it just won't be talked about much in the media. And it, like, how do you expect to fix this country, to get us back on track, if we can't even discuss the correct things to discuss, right? We can't even single out problems and tackle them. This is just buried as if it's like par for the course. This is just what it's like. Yeah, homelessness is going to rise. It just is what it is. They act like it's some innate law of nature and it's like uninteresting and there's nothing you could do about it. All of that is bogus. All of that is bullshit. And then, of course, you know, I got to show you this. U.S. homelessness rose by record 18%. That was what we just discussed. And then, oh, wow. The wealth of the world's 5 richest men more than doubled since 2020. So we've gone over these income and wealth inequality numbers, but guys, they're rubbing it in. They're spitting in our eye just how rigged this system is. The bottom 80% of Americans only hold 7% of the wealth. The income and wealth inequality is so out of whack that, you know, if I were to show you in chart form or graph form, you'd be like, that can't be right. That can't be right. But it is right. The top 1% effectively stole 50 trillion from the bottom 90% since 1974. This is the world that we live in. This is the world that we live in. The bottom 50% of Americans, they only hold 2.6% of the wealth. The 3 richest billionaires have more than the bottom 50% combined. Unless you think all these billionaires are just geniuses and they all pulled themselves up by their bootstraps, wrong. About 60% of billionaires came already from extreme wealth and privilege. So it's not a meritocracy. It is not the harder you work, the further you go. It's just not the case. And then, of course, the richest 400 Americans pay an effective lower tax rate than the bottom 50% of Americans. The richest Americans pay 23%. That's their effective rate. The bottom 50% pay 24.2%. So a regular working Joe or Jane pays a higher percentage than a billionaire does. I mean, this is just, like, what is there to say about it? The whole system is disgusting. The whole system is rigged. The whole system is falling apart. And here we have a situation where homelessness skyrockets. And again, there won't be much talk about it. Is Donald Trump going to propose a plan? Are MAGA, are they going to propose a plan now to tackle this? No. Is Biden going to do something on his way out the door to handle this? I doubt it. Right? Is the media going to talk about this in any serious way? Why doesn't this deserve breaking news at the bottom of the screen with hair on fire coverage? Right? It does. But we won't do that. Why? Because the moral meter of American media and American politicians is broken. It's shattered. It's shattered. That's how we get to a place where we can have a genocide going on in Gaza and basically nobody talks about it anymore. I mean, it's as grotesque as it gets, man. It's as grotesque as it gets. So these people deserve a roof over their head. And this is a symptom of a rotten, decrepit system which has not justified its right to exist, right? We need an economy that works for the people, not people who are forced to arbitrarily conform to an economy that doesn't even value their labor in any serious way. So, I mean, just a horrible, horrible story. And it really goes to show you how much more work we have to do, because this is like late-stage capitalist, rotten system falling apart at the seams, and everybody at the top is just whistling Dixie and pretending like there's nothing wrong, and the media is not even going to talk about this like it's worthy of conversation. And they could not be more incorrect. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.